In the year 2347, humanity had finally reached the stars. Space travel was no longer a dream but a reality, and Earth's United Nations had formed a massive fleet to explore and protect their interests across the galaxy. This fleet was made up of sleek warships powered by quantum drives, capable of moving faster than light and reaching distant planets in mere seconds. These ships were marvels of technology, symbols of human progress, and sources of pride for those who served aboard them. But not every ship in the fleet shared this glory. Among the shining vessels that zipped through space like silver arrows stood one oddity, a relic from an earlier time. It was called the Vanguard, and it wasn't fast, shiny, or advanced. Instead, it was slow, bulky, and outdated, relying on old-fashioned ion engines that could barely keep up with the rest of the fleet. Its design looked like something pulled straight out of a history book, and its reputation was even worse. To most people, the Vanguard was nothing more than a joke, a floating museum piece that should have been retired decades ago. Commanding this unlikely vessel was Captain Daniel Harper, a man in his late 50s with graying hair and sharp blue eyes. Harper wasn't loud or flashy. He was quiet, thoughtful, and deliberate in everything he did. He didn't demand respect, but he earned it quietly through his actions. Still, even Harper couldn't escape the ridicule that followed the Vanguard. People whispered behind his back, wondering why such a seasoned officer was stuck with such an embarrassing assignment. Some said he'd been passed over for promotions too many times. Others claimed he simply refused to retire, clinging stubbornly to his command despite being past his prime. The crew of the Vanguard didn't fare much better. They weren't the best and brightest of the fleet. They were the leftovers, the misfits, and the rookies who hadn't managed to secure positions on faster, more prestigious ships. There was Elena Rivera, the young navigator who had graduated at the top of her class but struggled to gain confidence under pressure. She often second-guessed herself, which made her hesitant during critical moments. Then there was Ryan Cole, the hot-headed engineer who always seemed ready to argue with anyone who disagreed with him. He had a knack for fixing things, but his temper sometimes got in the way of teamwork. Samantha Sam Brooks rounded out the core group as the ship's medic. Sam was kind-hearted and hard-working, but she carried a deep-seated fear of failure. She worried constantly about whether she was cut out for life in space, especially when faced with emergencies that tested her skills. Despite her doubts, she cared deeply for the crew and did everything she could to keep them healthy and safe. Together, these four, Harper, Elena, Ryan, and Sam, formed the heart of the Vanguard. But none of them felt particularly proud of their roles. Every time they docked at a space station or joined a fleet exercise, they braced themselves for the inevitable laughter and mockery. Other pilots would fly loops around their sluggish ship, taunting them with calls like, "Hey, Grandpa, need help catching up?" Officers at briefings would exchange smirks whenever the Vanguard's name came up, treating it as a punchline rather than a serious asset. Things came to a head during a large-scale training exercise designed to test the fleet's readiness for potential threats. Dozens of ships gathered near Jupiter's orbit, performing complex maneuvers and simulated battles. The Vanguard was supposed to join the formation, but its ancient engines caused delays right from the start. By the time they arrived hours late, the exercise was already underway. The sleek warships darted gracefully through space, leaving trails of glowing plasma in their wake. Meanwhile, the Vanguard lumbered into position, looking painfully out of place. Admiral Lewis, the fleet commander, watched the scene unfold with thinly veiled frustration. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a booming voice, Lewis didn't bother hiding his disdain. During the debriefing session afterward, he singled out the Vanguard for criticism. "Captain Harper," he began, his tone dripping with sarcasm, "perhaps next time you can find a way to arrive before the battle is over, or do we need to send out search parties just to locate your ship?" The room erupted in laughter. Even some of Harper's own crew members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, embarrassed by the public humiliation. But Harper remained calm, his expression unreadable. He nodded slightly, acknowledging the Admiral's words without offering a defense. Inside, however, something stirred, a quiet determination that burned brighter with each insult hurled at his ship and crew. Later that evening, as the Vanguard drifted silently through space, Harper stood alone on the bridge, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. He thought about the ridicule, the dismissive comments, the way his crew tried so hard to prove themselves despite the odds stacked against them. He knew they were capable of greatness even if no one else saw it yet, and he also knew that the Vanguard had untapped potential hidden beneath its outdated exterior. Unbeknownst to the rest of the fleet, the Vanguard carried secrets, experimental, technologies developed years ago but never fully implemented. Hidden compartments housed prototype equipment, including an energy shield generator far ahead of its time, and a stockpile of EMP missiles designed to disable enemy electronics. These innovations had been forgotten by everyone except Harper, who had spent countless hours studying classified files about the ship's original purpose. As Harper gazed out at the stars, he allowed himself a small smile. The fleet might laugh now, but sooner or later, they would see what the Vanguard was truly capable of. Until then, he would bide his time preparing his crew for the moment when they would rise above the mockery and prove their worth. For now, though, the crew remained unaware of Harper's plans. Back in the mess hall, Ryan vented his frustrations to Elena and Sam. "Why do we even bother?" he muttered, stabbing at his food with a fork. "We're just a joke to them. No matter what we do, they'll never take us seriously." Elena frowned, pushing her plate aside. "Maybe they're right," she admitted softly. "I mean, look at us, we're slow, outdated. Maybe we don't belong out here." Sam shook her head firmly. "That's not true," she said. "We may not be the fastest or the fanciest, but we're still part of this fleet. We have a job to do and we'll do it the best we can." Ryan snorted. "Yeah, well, good luck convincing the rest of them." Despite their doubts, none of them realized how close they were to proving themselves, not just to the fleet, but to each other and to themselves. Little did they know, their chance would come sooner than expected, and when it did, the Vanguard would show the universe that sometimes the slowest warrior is the deadliest of all. Weeks passed after the disastrous training exercise, and the Vanguard continued its unremarkable patrols along the edges of human space. The crew tried to move past the humiliation they had faced, but the sting of Admiral Lewis's words lingered. Ryan Cole still grumbled about how they were treated like a joke, while Elena Rivera worked harder than ever to prove herself, though her confidence remained shaky. Sam Brooks kept busy tending to minor injuries and illnesses, doing her best to lift the crew's spirits with her warm smile and kind words. Captain Daniel Harper, meanwhile, stayed focused on his duties, quietly observing his team and preparing them for whatever challenges lay ahead. It wasn't long before those challenges arrived, and in a way no one could have anticipated. Reports began flooding in from distant colonies scattered across the galaxy. Entire settlements had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only eerie silence. Communication signals went dark, and ships sent to investigate never returned. At first, people dismissed the incidents as accidents or technical failures, but as the disappearances grew more frequent, fear spread like wildfire. Scientists scrambled to analyze fragments of data recovered from the affected regions, piecing together theories about what or who was responsible. The name, the Devourer, started circulating among the fleet. Some believed it was an alien entity, perhaps a rogue artificial intelligence created by an ancient civilization. Others thought it might be a natural phenomenon, a cosmic anomaly that consumed everything in its path. Whatever it was, one thing was clear. It posed a grave threat to humanity, and if left unchecked, it would soon reach Earth itself. Admiral Lewis called an emergency meeting to address the crisis. Dozens of captains gathered aboard the flagship, their faces grim as they listened to updates from researchers and scouts. The situation was dire. Ships equipped with advanced sensors had detected strange readings emanating from deep space, AEO, massive cloud-like formation drifting toward populated systems. It moved slowly but steadily, absorbing debris, energy, and even entire planets as it went. "We need every available ship to intercept this thing," Lewis declared, his voice booming through the briefing room. "If we don't stop it now, it'll destroy us all." When Harper volunteered the Vanguard for the mission, the room erupted in laughter once again. Pilots exchanged amused glances and officers whispered sarcastic remarks under their breath. "What can that old tin can do?" someone sneered. "It'll probably break down halfway there." Harper didn't react. He stood calmly, his expression neutral, as he waited for the chuckles to subside. When the room finally quieted, he spoke in a steady voice. "We may not be the fastest ship in the fleet, but we're ready to serve. Assign us wherever you need us." Lewis hesitated, clearly torn between dismissing Harper outright and acknowledging the man's dedication. Finally, he sighed and gestured dismissively. "Fine. You'll patrol the outer rim. Keep an eye out for anything unusual and report back immediately. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary." The assignment was a slap in the face. Everyone knew the outer rim was a dead zone, remote, desolate, and far removed from the main action. It was essentially a babysitting duty meant to keep the Vanguard out of the way. But Harper accepted the order without protest. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of pity in Lewis's eyes, but Harper ignored it. He had a plan, even if no one else did. Back aboard the Vanguard, tensions simmered among the crew. Ryan was furious. "This is ridiculous," he snapped as they prepared for departure. "They're sending us to the middle of nowhere just so we don't embarrass them. What's the point? We're wasting our time." Elena frowned, adjusting settings on her navigation console. "Maybe it's better this way," she said softly. "At least we won't get in anyone's way." "That's exactly what we're doing," Ryan shot back. "We're sitting ducks out there. If the Devourer shows up, we're toast." Sam stepped in, trying to calm the argument. "Let's focus on what we can control," she suggested. "We've got a job to do and we'll do it right. That's all that matters." Harper listened silently, letting his crew vent their frustrations. When the conversation died down, he addressed them. "I know how you feel," he said, "but remember why we're here. We swore to protect humanity, no matter the odds. Whether we're patrolling the outer rim or fighting alongside the rest of the fleet, our mission is the same. And I believe we can make a difference." His words didn't erase their doubts, but they quieted the tension. For now, at least, the crew focused on their preparations, running diagnostics on the ship's systems and reviewing emergency protocols. Harper spent hours alone in his quarters poring over classified files about the Vanguard. He had discovered something during his research, something that gave him hope. Hidden within the ship's design were experimental technologies developed decades ago but never fully implemented. One of these was a prototype energy shield generator, capable of deflecting high-energy attacks. Another was a stockpile of EMP missiles designed to disable electronic systems. These innovations had been forgotten by everyone except Harper, who now saw them as their greatest advantage. As the Vanguard limped toward the outer rim, Harper called a meeting with his senior crew members. "Listen carefully," he began, spreading holographic schematics across the table. "We're not as helpless as people think. This ship has capabilities no one else knows about. If the Devourer comes our way, we'll be ready." Ryan raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "You're saying we've got secret weapons hidden somewhere?" "Exactly," Harper replied. "And it's time we put them to use." Elena leaned forward, intrigued. "What are they?" Harper explained the details. The energy shield generator, the EMP missiles, and other modifications buried deep within the ship's structure. The crew listened intently, their skepticism gradually giving way to cautious optimism. For the first time in weeks, they felt a spark of purpose. "What's the plan?" Sam asked. "For now, we monitor the area and stay alert," Harper said. "If the Devourer shows up, we'll use our speed, or lack of it, to our advantage. It's big and slow, which means it won't be able to maneuver easily. We'll lure it into a trap and strike when the time is right." Ryan smirked, finally warming to the idea. "So we're basically bait?" "In a way," Harper admitted, "but bait with teeth." The crew nodded, determination replacing their earlier frustration. They threw themselves into their tasks, fine-tuning the ship's systems and running simulations to prepare for battle. Elena studied star charts, plotting potential routes and identifying choke points where they could ambush the Devourer. Ryan worked tirelessly in the engine room, boosting power output and reinforcing critical components. Sam stocked medical supplies and reviewed emergency procedures, ensuring the crew would be ready for anything. Days turned into weeks as the Vanguard drifted through the emptiness of the outer rim. The crew scanned the void constantly, watching for any sign of danger. Despite their efforts, nothing appeared. The silence stretched on, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional crackle of static over the comms. Then, one fateful night, the sensors picked up something unusual. A faint distortion in the fabric of space, growing stronger with each passing moment. Harper rushed to the bridge, his heart pounding as he stared at the readings. "Is it?" he began, unable to finish the question. Elena nodded, her hands trembling slightly on the controls. "It's the Devourer," she confirmed. "It's heading straight for us." The atmosphere aboard the Vanguard shifted instantly. Fear hung heavy in the air, but beneath it lay a steely resolve. They had trained for this moment, prepared for the worst. Now, they would face it head-on. Harper took a deep breath, his voice steady as he addressed the crew. "This is it. Stay sharp, follow the plan, and trust each other. We've got one shot at this." Ryan grinned, his earlier doubts replaced by fierce determination. "Let's show them what this old bucket can really do." Elena tightened her grip on the navigation console, focusing on the task ahead. Sam checked her medkit one last time, ready to spring into action if needed. Together, they braced themselves for the fight of their lives. As the Devourer loomed closer, its shadowy form blotting out the stars, Harper allowed himself a small smile. The fleet might have laughed at the Vanguard, but soon they would see the truth. Slow and steady wins the race, and sometimes the deadliest weapon is the one nobody sees coming. The Devourer approached slowly, a massive cloud-like entity that seemed to swallow everything in its path. It drifted through space like a predator stalking its prey, absorbing debris, energy, and even asteroids as it moved. The crew of the Vanguard watched in stunned silence as their sensors struggled to make sense of the readings. The entity was unlike anything they had ever encountered. Part living organism, part machine, and entirely alien. Elena Rivera sat at her navigation console, her fingers flying over the controls as she tried to pinpoint its exact location. "It's huge," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I've never seen anything like it." Ryan Cole stood nearby, his usual sarcastic demeanor replaced by wide-eyed awe. "This thing is going to eat us alive," he muttered, shaking his head. "We're not ready for this." Sam Brooks gripped the edge of her seat, trying to stay calm despite the growing tension. "We have to focus," she said firmly. "Panicking won't help anyone." Captain Daniel Harper remained calm, his eyes fixed on the view screen as he studied the approaching threat. He knew fear would only slow them down, and they couldn't afford to hesitate. "Everyone, listen carefully," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "We've trained for this. Stick to the plan and we'll get through it." As the Devourer drew closer, smaller scout drones began peeling off from the main mass, spreading out to investigate the area. One of these drones detected the Vanguard almost immediately and turned toward the ship, accelerating with terrifying speed. Alarms blared across the bridge as the crew scrambled to prepare. "Here it comes," Elena shouted, her hands moving frantically over the controls. "Brace for impact." Harper didn't panic. Instead, he leaned forward in his chair, issuing orders with quiet authority. "Elena, plot an evasive course. Ryan, boost engine output to maximum. Sam, stand by in case anyone gets hurt." The drone fired a burst of energy, narrowly missing the Vanguard as the ship lurched sideways. Elena guided the vessel through a series of sharp turns, using the asteroid field nearby to her advantage. The bulky warship wasn't fast, but its size and weight gave it surprising agility when pushed to the limit. Ryan worked furiously in the engine room, rerouting power to keep the engines running smoothly. Sweat dripped down his face as he shouted updates to the bridge. "Engines are holding steady, but I don't know how long they'll last. Sam monitored the crew's vitals from her station, ensuring everyone stayed safe. She could feel her own heart racing, but she forced herself to focus. "Everyone's okay for now," she reported, her voice tight but controlled. The drone continued its relentless assault, firing repeatedly as it closed in. Shields flared brightly each time, absorbing the blows but weakening with every hit. Harper knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They needed to act quickly or risk being overwhelmed. "Prepare to fire the EMP missile," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Ryan hesitated, glancing nervously at the controls. "Are you sure? If we miss, we're dead." "We won't miss," Harper replied confidently. "Trust me." Elena adjusted their position, bringing the drone into range. Her hands shook slightly, but she steadied herself, focusing on the task at hand. "Ready to fire," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. Harper nodded, his expression grim. "Fire!" The missile launched with a deafening roar, streaking toward the drone like a bolt of lightning. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as everyone held their breath. Then, with a brilliant flash of light, the EMP detonated, disabling the drone instantly. Its systems failed, and it disintegrated into harmless fragments. The bridge erupted in cheers as the crew celebrated their victory. Even Ryan managed a shaky laugh, slumping back against the wall in relief. "Did we really just do that?" he asked, still processing what had happened. Harper allowed himself a small smile, though his eyes remained focused on the larger threat looming in the distance. "Good work, everyone," he said. "But this isn't over yet. The Devourer is still out there, and it's not going to stop." Elena nodded, already turning her attention back to the sensors. "It's slowing down," she reported. "Maybe the EMP disrupted it somehow." Sam frowned, studying the readings. "Or maybe it's regrouping. We need to be ready for another attack." Harper agreed. "Stay sharp. This was just the beginning." As the crew prepared for round 2, Harper took a moment to reflect on what they had accomplished. Against all odds, they had managed to take down one of the Devourer's scouts. It was a small victory, but it proved something important. The Vanguard wasn't just a joke. It was a weapon, and its crew was capable of greatness. Still, Harper knew they couldn't rely on luck alone. The Devourer was far more dangerous than any single drone, and they would need more than quick reflexes to defeat it. He called another meeting with his senior crew members, laying out his thoughts. "We've got its attention," Harper began, pointing to a holographic display of the Devourer. "Now we need to lure it into a trap. Elena, can you guide us into that asteroid field?" Elena nodded, tracing a route with her finger. "If we stick to the narrow gaps, we can use the rocks to block its movements. It's big and slow, so it won't be able to follow us easily." "Good," Harper said. "Ryan, I want you to rig the reactor for overload. When the time comes, we'll create a massive electromagnetic pulse to collapse its core." Ryan raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "You mean blow ourselves up?" "Not exactly," Harper replied. "We'll launch the EMP missile first, then escape in the pods before the reactor goes critical. It's risky, but it's our best shot." Sam looked uneasy, glancing between Harper and Ryan. "What about casualties? What if someone doesn't make it to the pods in time?" Harper met her gaze, his expression firm but compassionate. "We'll do everything we can to minimize risks, but if we don't stop the Devourer, billions of lives are at stake. Sometimes, sacrifices have to be made." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. No one liked the idea of sacrificing their ship, or potentially their lives, but they understood the stakes. This wasn't just about proving themselves anymore. It was about protecting humanity. Over the next few hours, the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for the final confrontation. Elena fine-tuned the navigation routes, memorizing every twist and turn of the asteroid field. Ryan rigged the reactor for overload, double-checking every connection to ensure it would work when needed. Sam stocked medical supplies and reviewed emergency protocols, making sure everyone knew what to do in case of injury. Meanwhile, Harper spent time with each member of the crew, offering words of encouragement and reminding them why they were here. He spoke to Elena about her fears, helping her find confidence in her abilities. He reassured Ryan that his skills were invaluable, even if he doubted himself sometimes, and he thanked Sam for her dedication, acknowledging the strength it took to care for others in such dire circumstances. By the time they reached the asteroid field, the crew felt united in a way they never had before. They weren't just individuals thrown together by circumstance, they were a team, working toward a common goal. As the Vanguard slipped between the jagged rocks, Harper addressed them one last time. "They laughed at us because they didn't understand what we're capable of," he said, his voice filled with quiet pride. "Today we show them, and ourselves, who we truly are. Let's finish this." With those words echoing in their minds, the crew braced themselves for the fight of their lives. The Devourer loomed closer, its tendrils reaching out like grasping fingers. But instead of fear, the crew felt determination. They had faced impossible odds before, and they had won. Now they would do it again. For the first time since joining the fleet, the Vanguard wasn't the laughing stock. It was a beacon of hope, a symbol of courage and resilience. And as the battle began, Captain Harper and his crew proved that even the slowest warrior could be the deadliest of all. The asteroid field was a chaotic maze of jagged rocks and swirling debris, a place where even the fastest ships dared not venture without careful planning. For the Vanguard, it was both a blessing and a curse. Its slow, lumbering movements made it an easy target in open space, but here, among the narrow gaps and sharp turns, the bulky warship found unexpected strength. The Devourer loomed closer, its massive form blotting out the stars as it followed them into the treacherous terrain. Captain Daniel Harper stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen as he guided his crew through the perilous route. "Elena," he said, his voice calm but firm, "keep us tight against the rocks. We need to make this as difficult for it as possible." Elena Rivera nodded, her hands moving quickly over the navigation console. She had spent hours memorizing every twist and turn of the asteroid field, and now she put that knowledge to use. The ship lurched and shuddered as it squeezed through narrow openings, narrowly avoiding collisions with jagged boulders. Despite her earlier doubts, Elena felt a surge of confidence as she realized just how much control she had over their fate. "We're clear," she announced after each close call, her voice growing steadier with each success. Ryan Cole worked tirelessly in the engine room, pushing the ancient ion engines to their absolute limit. Sweat poured down his face as he monitored power levels and rerouted energy to keep the systems running smoothly. Every groan of the metal hull sent a jolt of fear through him, but he refused to let it show. "Come on, baby," he muttered under, his breath patting the console affectionately. "Don't give up on me now." Sam Brooks stayed close to the bridge, ready to spring into action if anyone got hurt. She checked her medkit repeatedly, ensuring everything was in place for an emergency. Her mind raced with worst-case scenarios. What if someone got trapped during the escape? What if the reactor overload went wrong? But she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. "Just stay alive," she whispered to herself, gripping the edge of her seat tightly. Behind them, the Devourer moved like a living shadow, its tendrils stretching out to ensnare anything in its path. Smaller scout drones continued to swarm around the main mass, firing bursts of energy at the Vanguard. Shields flared brightly as they absorbed the attacks, weakening with every hit. Harper knew they couldn't keep this up forever. They needed to act fast or risk being overwhelmed. "Ryan, how's the reactor coming?" Harper asked, glancing toward the comms panel. "It's ready," Ryan replied, his voice strained but determined. "Just say the word, and I'll blow this thing sky high." Harper shook his head. "Not yet. We need to get closer first. Elena, take us deeper into the field." Elena hesitated, glancing nervously at the screen. "Closer?" "Captain, we're already cutting it close. One wrong move and we'll be toast." "I trust you," Harper said simply. "Do what you have to do." With a deep breath, Elena adjusted their course, guiding the Vanguard into an even tighter section of the asteroid field. The ship scraped against the rocks, sending sparks flying across the hull. Alarms blared as warning lights flashed red, but Elena ignored them, her focus unwavering. "We're almost there," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. As they reached the heart of the field, the Devourer began to struggle. Its massive size made it impossible to navigate the narrow gaps, forcing it to slow down significantly. Tendrils lashed out wildly, striking the asteroids and causing them to break apart. Debris filled the air, creating a deadly storm that threatened to crush anything caught in its path. "This is our chance," Harper said, standing tall as he addressed the crew. "Elena, position us directly beneath its core. Ryan, prepare the EMP missile for launch. Sam, get everyone suited up and ready to evacuate." The crew sprang into action, each member performing their role with precision born from hours of preparation. Elena plotted the final approach, her fingers flying over the controls as she brought the Vanguard within range of the Devourer's pulsating core. Ryan double-checked the missile's settings, ensuring it would detonate exactly when needed. Sam distributed emergency suits and oxygen tanks, making sure everyone knew the evacuation plan. 10 seconds until launch," Harper announced, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Hold steady." The Devourer seemed to sense the impending attack, its tendrils thrashing violently as it tried to crush the Vanguard. Rocks shattered around them, and the ship rocked violently from the impact. Shields flickered dangerously. Low and alarms screamed louder than ever. But Harper remained calm, his eyes locked on the countdown timer. 5, 4, 3. Elena clenched her fists, her knuckles white as she fought to keep the ship steady. Ryan held his breath, his finger hovering over the launch button. Sam gripped the back of her chair, praying silently for everything to go according to plan. 2, 1. Fire! The EMP missile launched with a deafening roar, streaking toward the Devourer's core like a bolt of lightning. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as everyone watched in stunned silence. Then, with a brilliant flash of light, the missile detonated, releasing a massive electromagnetic pulse that rippled outward in all directions. The Devourer convulsed violently, its tendrils collapsing inward as its systems failed. Energy crackled across its surface, and pieces of its outer shell began to break apart. It let out a low rumbling sound, a dying groan, as it started to disintegrate. "We did it!" Ryan shouted, punching the air in triumph. "We actually did it." But Harper didn't celebrate. He knew they weren't safe yet. "Everyone to the escape pods," he ordered, his voice sharp and urgent. "Now." The crew scrambled to obey, racing through the corridors as the ship's reactor began to overload. Warning klaxons blared incessantly, and the floor vibrated beneath their feet. Sam helped Elena into her suit, making sure the seals were secure before pulling on her own helmet. Ryan sprinted ahead, shouting instructions over his shoulder. Harper stayed behind until the very last moment, ensuring everyone else had reached the pods before heading to his own. As he climbed inside and sealed the hatch, he took one final look at the Vanguard. The old ship had been his home for years, and though it was battered and scarred, it had never let him down. "Goodbye, old friend," he whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. Moments later, the escape pods launched, shooting away from the doomed vessel just as the reactor reached critical mass. A blinding explosion lit up the asteroid field, engulfing the Vanguard in a fiery inferno. The shockwave rippled outward, tearing apart the remnants of the Devourer and scattering debris across the void. The crew watched in stunned silence as their ship disappeared in a blaze of glory. Tears streamed down Sam's face as she clutched her helmet while Ryan stared blankly at the wreckage, unable to process what had happened. Elena sat quietly, her hands trembling slightly as she replayed the events in her mind. Harper leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes for a moment. He felt a strange mix of sadness and pride. Sadness for the loss of his ship, but pride in what they had accomplished. Against all odds, they had faced an unimaginable threat and emerged victorious. The Vanguard might be gone, but its legacy would live on. For the first time in their lives, the crew of the Vanguard truly understood what it meant to be heroes. They had started as misfits and underdogs, mocked and dismissed by everyone around them. But now they were survivors, people who had proven that even the slowest warrior could be the deadliest of all. As the escape pods drifted silently through space, waiting to be rescued, Harper turned to his crew with a small smile. "They laughed. At us," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet pride. "But I think we showed them something worth remembering." And with that, the survivors of the Vanguard prepared to return home, carrying with them the story of how an old, slow-moving warship and its unlikely crew had saved humanity from destruction. The escape pods drifted silently through the wreckage-strewn void, their occupants shaken but alive. The explosion that had destroyed the Vanguard and the Devourer had left behind a chaotic field of debris, shattered asteroids, fragments of metal, and glowing embers that faded slowly into darkness. For a long moment, no one spoke. The crew sat in stunned silence, processing what they had just experienced. Captain Daniel Harper was the first to break the quiet. "Everyone okay?" he asked, his voice calm but tinged with concern as he checked each pod's status on the small monitor in front of him. One by one, the responses came in. Elena Rivera confirmed she was fine, though her voice trembled slightly. Ryan Cole muttered something about being alive for now, while Sam Brooks assured everyone she was unhurt but worried about exhaustion setting in. Harper nodded, relieved but still vigilant. They weren't out of danger yet. "We need to stay together," Harper instructed. "Stick close to the largest pieces of debris for cover. Rescue teams will be here soon." Kalina glanced at her navigation console, which was barely functional, but still operational enough to track their position. "I think we're near the edge of the asteroid field," she said. "If we can hold on until help arrives, we should be okay." Ryan leaned back in his seat, letting out a shaky laugh. "Can't believe we made it," he said, shaking his head. "We were supposed to be the joke of the fleet, and now, well, look at us." Sam smiled faintly, brushing tears from her cheeks. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, "but we did it together." Harper listened quietly, allowing his crew a moment to reflect. He knew they needed time to process everything: the loss of their ship, the destruction of the Devourer, and the realization that they had accomplished something extraordinary. But there was little time for rest. Space was unforgiving, and even though the Devourer was gone, survival was still their top priority. As the hours passed, the crew took turns monitoring their surroundings and checking life support systems. The pods were designed for short-term use and resources were limited. Oxygen levels were stable for now, but food and water supplies wouldn't last more than a day or two. Harper kept a close eye on the situation, ensuring no one panicked or let fatigue get the better of them. "Think anyone knows we're out here?" Ryan asked eventually, breaking the tense silence. "I mean, do they even know we stopped the Devourer?" "They'll figure it out," Harper replied confidently. "When they see the readings from this sector, they'll know something big happened. And once they piece it together, they'll come looking for us." Elena frowned, her brow furrowed in thought. "What if they don't find us in time? What if—" "They will," Harper interrupted gently, his tone firm but reassuring. "We've survived worse. Trust me." His words seemed to ease some of the tension, but doubts lingered in the air. None of them could forget how easily the Vanguard had been dismissed before. Would anyone truly believe they had defeated such a monstrous threat? Or would they be written off as lucky survivors who happened to stumble into victory? As night fell, or rather as the artificial lighting inside the pods dimmed to simulate nighttime, the crew tried to rest. Sleep didn't come easily, however. Every creak of the pod's metal walls, every flicker of the control panel lights, reminded them of how precarious their situation was. Harper stayed awake longer than the others, staring out at the stars through the tiny viewport. Despite everything, he felt a strange sense of peace. They had done what they set out to do. Whatever came next, they had earned their place among the stars. Rescue and Recognition Dawn arrived, not in the traditional sense, but marked by the gradual increase in activity outside the pods. At first it was just faint signals crackling over the comms channel, Then voices began to emerge, distant but clear. "This is Fleet Command calling unidentified escape pods. Please respond." Harper grabbed the communicator immediately. "This is Captain Daniel Harper of the Vanguard. We're here, requesting assistance." There was a pause, followed by a flurry of static. "Captain Harper? Is that really you? We thought—" "I'm afraid the Vanguard didn't make it," Harper said simply. "But we stopped the Devourer. It's gone." Another pause, longer, this time. When the voice returned, it carried a note of awe. "Understood, Captain. Stand by. Help is on the way." Within minutes, sleek rescue ships appeared on the horizon, their thrusters glowing brightly against the dark backdrop of space. The crew watched in amazement as the vessels maneuvered carefully through the debris field, pulling alongside the pods one by one. Grappling arms extended, securing the pods and guiding them aboard. Once inside the rescue ship, the crew was greeted with warmth and admiration. Medical teams rushed to check their vitals, offering blankets, food, and water. Officers saluted Harper respectfully, their earlier mockery replaced by genuine gratitude. Word of the Vanguard's sacrifice had already begun to spread, and the survivors found themselves treated not as misfits, but as heroes. Admiral Lewis himself boarded the rescue ship shortly after docking. His usual stern demeanor softened as he approached Harper, extending a hand. "Captain Harper, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I underestimated you and your crew. You saved us all." Harper accepted the handshake without hesitation. "Thank you, Admiral. But it wasn't just me. It was my crew. Without them, none of this would have been possible." Lewis nodded, solemnly, turning to address the rest of the group. "You've proven yourselves beyond measure. Humanity owes you a debt we can never repay." The journey back to Earth was bittersweet. The crew mourned the loss of the Vanguard, their home for so many years, but they also celebrated their hard-fought victory. Stories of their bravery spread quickly, reaching every corner of the galaxy. By the time they landed, they were celebrities, symbols of courage and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. A new legacy, back on Earth, the crew of the Vanguard received a hero's welcome. Crowds gathered in the streets, cheering as their shuttle descended into the capital city. Reporters swarmed, them asking questions about their mission, their struggles, and their triumph. For once, no one laughed. Instead, people listened intently, hanging on every word. At a formal ceremony hosted by Fleet Command, Harper and his crew were awarded Medals of Valor. Each member stepped forward to accept their honor, their faces a mix of pride and humility. When it was Harper's turn to speak, he addressed the crowd with quiet dignity. "When we started this journey, we were told we weren't good enough," he began, his voice steady but heartfelt. "They called us slow, outdated, useless. But we proved them wrong, not because we wanted revenge, but because we believed in ourselves. We believed in each other, and we believed in the mission." He paused, glancing at his crew before continuing. "Today we honor not just our victory, but the spirit of perseverance that drives us all. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, you have the power to make a difference. Never forget that." The audience erupted in applause, rising to their feet in a standing ovation. Harper smiled faintly, his eyes meeting those of his crew. They had come so far, from being mocked and dismissed to becoming legends in their own right. It was a transformation none of them could have predicted, but one they would cherish forever. Looking ahead, in the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm for the survivors of the Vanguard. Elena Rivera decided to pursue advanced training in navigation, determined to master her skills and inspire others to overcome self-doubt. Ryan Cole found a renewed sense of purpose, taking charge of engineering projects aimed at improving ship safety. Sam Brooks continued her work as a medic, dedicating herself to helping others recover from trauma. As for Harper, he chose to step away from active duty, content to mentor young officers and share the lessons he had learned throughout his career. Though he missed the Vanguard deeply, he took comfort in knowing its legacy lived on, not just in the stories people told, but in the hearts of those it had inspired. In honor of their sacrifice, a new class of warships was commissioned, bearing the name Vanguard class, sleek and powerful. These vessels incorporated cutting-edge technology based on the prototypes discovered aboard the original ship. Each one carried a plaque inscribed with the names of the brave crew who had given everything to protect humanity. Though the Vanguard was gone, its memory endured, a testament to the idea that sometimes the slowest warrior is the deadliest of all. And as the galaxy moved forward into an uncertain future, the story of Captain Daniel Harper and his crew served as a reminder that true strength lies not in speed or power, but in courage, determination, and the unbreakable bonds of teamwork. The story of the Vanguard and its crew spread far beyond Earth, reaching every corner of human space. News outlets replayed footage of the rescue mission, interviews with the survivors, and speeches from Admiral Lewis praising their bravery. The tale of how an old, slow-moving warship had defeated one of humanity's greatest threats became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the most unlikely heroes could rise to the occasion when it mattered most. For Captain Daniel Harper and his crew, life changed in ways they never expected. They were invited to speak at conferences, universities, and military academies, sharing their experiences with eager audiences. People wanted to hear about the challenges they faced, the sacrifices they made, and the lessons they learned along the way. Harper often found himself reflecting on those moments, not just as victories but as turning points that shaped who they had become. One evening, after a particularly long day of speaking engagements, Harper sat alone on a balcony overlooking the city skyline. The lights twinkled like stars, reminding him of the endless expanse of space he had called home for so many years. He thought about the Vanguard, its creaking hull and outdated systems, and smiled faintly. It might have been slow, but it had carried them through impossible odds. It had been more than just a ship. It had been a part of them. Elena Rivera joined him a few minutes later, carrying 2 cups of steaming coffee. She handed one to Harper before sitting down beside him. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, her voice soft. "Too much on my mind," Harper admitted, taking a sip of the warm drink. "What about you?" "I guess I'm still getting used to all this attention," Elena replied, gesturing toward the distant glow of the city. "It's strange, isn't it? A few weeks ago, no one cared about us. Now everyone wants to know our story." Harper chuckled softly. "Fame is fleeting, Elena. What matters is what we do with it while it lasts. Use this moment to inspire others, to show them that they can achieve great things, no matter where they start." Elena nodded thoughtfully, staring out at the horizon. "Do you think people will remember us? After all this dies down, I mean." "They'll remember," Harper said confidently. "Not because of what we did, but because of what it meant. We proved that strength isn't about speed or power. It's about heart. That's something worth remembering." A new beginning as. The weeks turned into months. The crew of the Vanguard began to forge new paths for themselves. Ryan Cole threw himself into his work, designing upgrades for the next generation of ships. His temper had softened over time, replaced by a quiet determination to honor the memory of the Vanguard. He often joked that if he couldn't fix the old ship, he'd make sure the new ones were indestructible. Sam Brooks returned to her role as a medic, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She started mentoring young recruits, teaching them not just how to treat injuries but how to stay strong under pressure. Her kindness and resilience inspired countless others, earning her a reputation as one of the fleet's most beloved figures. Elena Rivera continued to excel in navigation, quickly rising through the ranks. Her confidence grew with each passing day, and she became known for her ability to guide ships through even the most treacherous routes. Pilots who once mocked her now sought her advice, respecting her skill and dedication. And then there was Harper. Though he stepped away from active duty, he remained deeply involved in shaping the future of the fleet. He spent hours poring over blueprints for the Vanguard-class ships, ensuring they embodied the same spirit of innovation and perseverance as their namesake. When the first of these vessels launched, Harper stood proudly on the observation deck, watching as it soared into the sky. It was sleek and modern, yet unmistakably rooted in the legacy of the Vanguard. The legacy lives on years past, and the galaxy moved forward. New threats emerged, requiring fresh solutions and bold leadership. But the story of the Vanguard never faded. It became a cornerstone of military training programs, taught to cadets as an example of teamwork, adaptability, and courage. Textbooks featured detailed accounts of the battle against the Devourer, highlighting the ingenuity of Harper's plan and the bravery of his crew. Even among civilians, the legend endured. Parents told their children bedtime stories about the brave captain and his misfit crew who saved humanity from destruction. Artists painted murals depicting the Vanguard's final stand, capturing the fiery explosion that marked both its end and its triumph. Songs were written in its honor, sung in bars and taverns across the stars. For Harper and his crew, the recognition was humbling. They didn't seek fame or glory. They simply wanted to serve. Yet they understood the importance of their story. It wasn't just about them. It was about showing others what was possible when people worked together, trusted one another, and refused to give up. One day, Harper received a letter from a young cadet stationed aboard one of the Vanguard class ships. The cadet wrote about how hearing the story of the Vanguard had inspired her to join the fleet despite her fears. She described standing on the bridge of her ship, looking out at the stars, and feeling a connection to the past. "Because of you," she wrote, "I believe I can be brave too." Harper folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer alongside other mementos from his time aboard the Vanguard. He felt a lump in his throat as he realized the full impact of their journey. Their actions hadn't just saved lives, they had sparked a movement, inspiring countless others to reach for greatness. Among the stars decades later, long after Harper and his crew had retired, fragments of the Vanguard still drifted silently through space. Some pieces had been recovered and preserved in museums, displayed alongside plaques honoring the crew. Others remained adrift, scattered across the void like echoes of a forgotten era. But even as time erased physical traces of the ship, its legacy continued to shine brightly. Generations of explorers, soldiers, and dreamers looked to the stars, guided by the memory of a slow-moving warship that had proven itself unstoppable. They carried its spirit with them, knowing that true strength lies not in speed or power but in the unyielding resolve to protect what matters most. And so, the story of the Vanguard lived on, not just as a tale of heroism, but as a beacon of hope for anyone who dared to defy the odds. Somewhere among the stars its shadow lingered, whispering a simple truth to those who listened. Sometimes the slowest warrior is the deadliest of all.